You don't get in a cat fight in the middle of an urban area. It's just a bad idea. So what do? We got the cat fight in an urban area.
Anybody that looked at that terrain model and heard that briefing was scared.
Prayed, made my peace, and just pretty much decided, well, if it's my time, it's my time.
Instantly, you're just, wide-eyed, like, what's gonna happen?
We were fighting an enemy that had turned houses into Japanese pillboxes, right, with machine guns.
They see me. I know they see me. Boom, 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 boom. I'm talking, they on me.
The chaos has begun.
It's like your body's in a trance. Like, I get forced to watch a movie that I don't want to watch every night.
What I know I struggled with was survivor's guilt.
I went through a period where I was pretty angry.
It's the worst thing I could have ever imagined, and I saw my Marines and my corpsmen do incredible, incredible things.
Matt Saintsing here with the DV Podcast. And what you just heard were veterans from the Second Battle of Fallujah tell their stories. We're now 20 years apart from when the operation started, and this was the worst fighting of the Iraq War and the worst urban battle the Marine Corps saw since Vietnam. November marks 20 years since the operation began, and it's the perfect time for us to reflect on the human costs of war, the aftermath, and just what Marines, sailors, and soldiers went through. The discussion you're about to hear is moderated by my colleague, Brian Buckwalter, a retired Marine himself, and the panel took place at our national convention in Phoenix, Arizona. We have all kinds of content, including video, print, websites about the 20th anniversary of the Battle of Fallujah, which will go live in November 2024. And you can learn more about it at dav.org/Fallujah. But let's jump right into it. Here's Brian Buckwalter and the veterans who fought the Battle of Fallujah.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for this conversation reflecting on Fallujah 20 years later. My name is Brian Buckwalter with DAV's communications team, and joining me on stage now are four people who were there. We have Army National Guard veteran Christine Knight. She was a combat medic. Marine veterans Jonathan Canal, a combat photographer, and Aubrey McDade, a machine gunner and a Navy Cross recipient, and Lucian Reed, a freelance photographer who embedded with the Marines. They're going to share with us some of their experiences from Fallujah and candidly talk about the 2 decades since. To start, I just want to talk for a minute and have each of you introduce yourself. Christine, we'll start with you.
Well, I joined the Wisconsin National Guard first and joined the military due to the fact that I grew up a Navy brat and military was in my blood, and it was the right time of my life to help me straighten up and have some structure. Got to go to Nicaragua for a while and then got deployed to Iraq.
John?
So I grew up in Daytona Beach, New Smyrna Beach, Florida. Really, my decision to join came at the conclusion of high school as I was graduating. College wasn't the answer because I didn't have the grades to get scholarships, and my family didn't have the means to send me to school. The rest, as they say, is history, and here we are.
My name is Aubrey McDade Jr. I'm considered to be an accidental Marine. Best friend went to the Air Force and kind of just put it on my heart to go. I was able to stay in the Marine Corps for 18 years, and now here I am.
I graduated from journalism school just after September 11th. I intended to try to find some way to get to Afghanistan and to Iraq. Took me until 2004 at chance encounter with another journalist who was going over, sort of gave me the keys to the Marine Corps. I called them up, said I wanted to do a full deployment with a deploying unit. That unit turned out to be the 11th MU. Shipped out of San Diego with them, was in Battle of Dodgeoff, ended up in Fallujah with 3-1, 1-4, and 3-1 are sister battalions. Two battalion commanders talked, and one recommended me to the other one, and they put me on a helicopter.
When you've heard about Fallujah and you're going in, like, what was going through your mind? Like, what did you know about what was about to happen?
I had a unique career. Most of us that serve, that, especially when you get promoted to NCO, you're not in the same unit for that long. They move you around so you don't get comfortable. when I heard about Fallujah and us going, I had heard about all the horrific things, you know, especially Baghdad and Osama bin Laden and all that stuff. But just me being me, it was never one of those things that I gave much value to. I gave more value into, let's just put the work in so when the time comes, we ain't got to get ready. We're already ready for me.
For me, the unit that I was one for was being sent to Iraq on an emergency basis because of Fallujah 1, right? So the battles that took place in the spring. I showed up to the battalion a couple of weeks before the actual battle took place. And so I had time to kind of see the before picture. And, you know, everybody knew this is what's going to happen. It was like, it was written on the wall.
And for you, Christine, it was different because you were up in more of a remote part of Iraq when you found out you were coming down to Fallujah, right?
Yeah, we were actually preparing to demob out of the country when they tasked our unit with 3 track ambulances to go down south to help in support of this. And so we had a very, I wouldn't say quiet time, but it was definitely not in the heavy action for the majority of my deployment. Our leadership had taken a lot of the pressure off of us and put teams together and threw our names and our team names in a hat and picked out teams and go, all right, you guys are the 3 that we would like to send. Does anybody want to step back? Anybody not want to go? And we all looked at each other like, well, damn, somebody's got to go. If somebody says no, somebody else has to go. So all of us said, we'll go. And yeah.
What do you all remember from just prior? Essentially the Marine Corps and the Army and everyone else that participated. This was a joint operation. And the U.S. government pretty much said, all bets are off, go. What were those moments like prior to going in?
The night before, when we were staged outside of the city, I got to watch a symphony of the military working together, sitting outside of the city at night, taking my nods off and on and looking at the C-130s up above, painting targets and then watching the jets come by and hit them. It was the most amazing thing. I still get goosebumps thinking about that. I got to be a part of that. I got to see that in action. How many of us actually get to see that?
I mean, I was second your experience of watching this sort of symphony of firepower and violence rain down on this place. Was extraordinary. And I didn't even have nods, so I didn't even see what you had. I mean, I was just my own human eyes. But that was overwhelming. And then there's, you know, sort of small stuff like, you know, we were supposed to go in there and dig foxholes. I didn't have an E-tool. I wasn't digging anything. So there was a place where like the Amtrak had spun around and kind of pushed up a bunch of dirt. So that's where I was like going to sleep. But the whole time I was lying there, obviously I was nervous about the battle, but also I was like, I hope that Amtrak doesn't come back and run me over. You know, like I was sort of asleep, but not really asleep. And just the like reflective, there were kind of like officers and NCOs kind of clustered around talking to each other and looking at maps with little red lights and that kind of thing. But mostly everybody was just kind of waiting for the dawn.
I remember being buttoned up in the back of the AAVs. You know, we're sitting there and you can't see, you can't really hear. I mean, the diesel engine's running, so you're kind of in this solitude. You're just waiting. You're sitting there and you're like waiting, like, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? And then we got the word to go and the tracks start rolling and everybody's kind of puckers up, right? The factor changes a little bit. Everybody's tense. And then we hit the city wall and the ramp drops and all hell breaks loose. But you're running through this, you know, through the breach in the wall into the city and it's just chaos. I mean, there's tracer rounds going everywhere. Now the explosions are going off. You can't see. I mean, you're just trying to find where's the buddy to the left and to the right of me. And it was such a dichotomy of feelings because it was this quiet, almost serene, peaceful feeling in the back of this tracks to just pure all-out chaos when the ramp dropped and we were going through the wall in the city.
You know, we could talk for hours about the experience. What was the moment for each of you that sticks out perhaps the most from Fallujah?
For me, it was the night that, you know, we got ambushed in an alleyway. Aubrey won the Navy Cross for that night, but I was like the 6th man in the column around the corner when our lead element got attacked. I ran around the corner into the alleyway, and as I'm coming in the alleyway, I can hear Corporal Anderson at the end of the alleyway crying out for help. Help me, help me. And I hear Russell, one of the saw gunners down there. I came over to him like, Russell, what's going on? He's like, my leg, I don't think my leg's there. And I won't go through the whole thing, but I mean, Russell's there bleeding with his leg half hanging attached, and Anderson's crying out at the end of the alleyway for people to help him. I'm yelling to him, Anderson, we're coming, hang in there. We're coming, we're gonna come get you. And it's around that time that the insurgents came back into the alleyway and they reattacked. They started shooting down the alleyway and almost, killed me. And Aubrey comes in and winds up running up into the fight, into the fray, and grabs Anderson and starts dragging him out. We provide some security on the end of the alleyway. But for me, it's hearing Anderson's voice, calling out, asking for help, bleeding in this alleyway in Fallujah, and I'm not able to get to him in time. I'm not able to move forward fast enough to save my Marine brother. That's my memory, the worst one. There's some good memories, but that's the worst memory that I have from Fallujah. There's no shaking it. Unfortunately, it's the one that haunts me. The one thing that haunts me the most coming out of there is hearing Anderson's voice, hearing Anderson cry for help, and the guilt of not making it to him in time to try and save him.
I have two really strong memories of Fallujah because I want to say that my time there must have been somewhere between 2 weeks, but it felt like one long day. It was a long period of time. We were in the government center. Commander Jadek had set up this forward aid station where casualties would be brought in. We could stabilize them and then transport them back out to the rear hospital outside of the city. And this young man came in with half of his face missing, the lower part of his jaw was totally gone. And Commander Jadek's like, all right, we gotta take him back. So I got to ride in the back with this man who was completely conscious and walking around and missing part of his face and sitting in the back of an armored ambulance, just praying with him, for him, that we got him home. And the beautiful thing is that I got to hear his voice tonight. I got to hear his voice for the first time in 20 years. Because I teased him. I said, he didn't talk much that night, but that was, I don't know what his rank was, but Jacob Knopsler. Yeah.
What you was talking about Anderson, we was coming down this alleyway on patrol. It was, maybe 11, close to midnight. I heard over the PRR radio, Anderson calling back saying, we got regular special forces ahead. And I'm immediately saying, open fire, open fire, open fire. But I'm a machine gunner, so I'm attached to this platoon, and they trying to practice noise discipline because it's dark, and they wondering why I'm screaming. So I immediately put my machine guns down the avenue of approach and get one in the overwatch position, and I start running. I'm a pretty fast person, but I feel like I was running in slow motion. And by the time I get to the front, I hear our platoon commander saying, let's move forward and check it out. Then when I get up there, boom, 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 everything already takes place. I don't know where Anderson is. I haven't seen staff. He was a staff sergeant at the time when I was a sergeant. I haven't seen staff sergeant at the time. I go into the CCP, which is the casualty collection point, where they keeping all of the people who get hurt. And I tell my staff sergeant tells me, he's gunner sergeant at the time, he tells me, I think we got 3 people hurt. I think Anderson is dead. I said, well, I go get them, just don't let me die. He said, well, we don't have tank support. We don't have any indirect assets for like 45 minutes. You can't get hit. I just had this thing that I did when I was nervous, so I pulled all this gear off, and I dropped down, I did some push-ups. For the sake of the conversation, I'm gonna say 20 because it sounds badass, right? But if I was like 5 or 6, about to do these push-ups, so I run across this alleyway, and the first Marine that I land on is Robert Kelly, and he told me where everyone was. And so long short of it, I went through and did the best that I could to get these guys out of that alleyway. Knopsler happened after that fight.
Okay.
The same night, man.
It was a long night for you guys.
Yes, ma'am. The same night. After that night, we moved, and the hardest part about that fight, you said about the worst thing I remember, was the Marines crying after that. That's still the part that haunts me. It was that part was the hardest.
For me, there's what has become this iconic engagement in Fallujah. Partially iconic because I was in the middle of it taking pictures the whole time. The place has been coming down is the Hell House. A few days into the battle, it was kind of a lull. The guys I was with had gotten firm into the house, and they were kind of going around and clearing the area around the house. And it was like a super quiet morning, basically, after a lot of hard days. And just kind of going along, and I was kind of trailing along behind him. And I was actually sitting in the back of the Humvee, just because I actually had something that happened to my knee and I was just taking it easy and started to hear gunfire. I started to hear pistol fire actually, which was weird. Got out of the Humvee, like ran towards the fire, and a fire team from the platoon had gone into this house and just walked right into the middle of like 4 or 5 guys in the house, right? And exchanged fire. They killed 2 of them. One of the Marines had been wounded. One of the, they could tell that there were more guys that he got upstairs. So I show up, I'm not the reinforcements, but I'm there. There's other Marines come in. They kind of push in. There's another exchange. 2 of them are wounded, but they're wounded on the other side of the floor plan of the bottom floor. Now they're stuck. And then more Marines are coming and more Marines are coming. And ultimately, it was like a 45-minute firefight inside of a house where there were, Marines in places where they couldn't be gotten out. And it took that long to finally rip the bars off of windows and rip the whole wall of the side of the building off to try to get people out without bringing them back through the kill zone. Unfortunately, 1 Marine was killed there. A dozen were wounded, maybe, or more, some seriously. And I took a photograph in there that has come to be quite well known of First Sergeant Brad Castle, later Sergeant Major Castle, who being carried out of the house by 2 Marines after being grievously wounded. That photograph has gone on to be turned into, there's statues at Camp Lejeune and Camp Pendleton of it. It's a thing. And, of all of my experiences in Iraq, particularly, that's the one that always is with me the most, is kind of brought back to me the most. People ask me about it, right? The photograph's out there. I encounter it in places. There's a particular kind of camaraderie and brotherhood from being in that experience. Like the Marines I was with, we were all in Fallujah. It's like, even within that subset, it's like, who was in that house? That's by far the most spectacular, harrowing experience that I had, in 8 years of covering the wars. So yeah, I mean, that's the one that sticks with me the most.
All of you have had these experiences. There's a shared bond of Fallujah, but from there, you all kind of go to your separate ways. You stay in Iraq for a few years. You go on to Afghanistan for a few years. I mean, you pretty much lived in a war zone for a number of years. Kind of go your separate ways, and you have to process this experience. I mean, each of you have had individual experiences. I want to know what's been important to you in dealing and processing this experience, because obviously it's poignant in all of your lives. From talking with all of you, it's probably the pinnacle moment of your life. How have you handled it? How have you processed it? How have you dealt with it since?
For me, it's been space. I needed space when I got back. I needed time and God. Pretty much in that order. Time, space, and God.
I just layered more on top of it. It's on level, and I just kept doing it.
Yeah.
Right. You talk about sort of being the pinnacle. I mean, for better or worse, I don't think I was ever any better at a thing than that. I've gone on and done lots of other stuff since then, but like that, I think, was me the most in my own element, really, those years. When we stopped fighting those wars, Iraq, we left, Afghanistan, it was like 10 more years of just trying to figure out how to get out of there. Once there wasn't a big story anymore, once there wasn't going to be another operation, there wasn't going to be another surge, there wasn't another plan, I was able to walk away from it. A lot of people don't, right? There are a lot of people in my profession. I mean, I even kind of walk away from that profession. I'm like a former war photographer, right? A lot of people who do it, like, that's just all they ever do.
Did you ever have to do any like therapy or anything?
Not really. I mean, one of the things that I was, one of the differences between journalists and soldiers, Marines, et cetera, is that like I was not responsible for anything, right? Like it was not my job to make sure that my Marines came home alive, right? I never pulled a trigger. I never lit up a car with a family in it thinking that it was a car bomb, right? I may have been standing around. I may have been taking a picture of it. I may have been present. I may have said something to try to stop somebody from doing something, but I don't have responsibility, right? And that's a huge difference. Huge difference.
I think like any good sea service Marine, I compartmentalized. I locked the doors down, battened down the hatches, and it stayed there dormant for 20 years. It's not until the last few years for me, last year or so, that, honestly, by the graces of DAV connections, that Dan Clare put me in touch with Aubrey. We started talking slightly. Got Brian, who I worked with in the Marine Corps, who kind of brought me in the fold, that I've started to let anything out of the cage. It's been 20 long years of internalizing things, living with a lot of anger, a lot of guilt. It's been cathartic recently to kind of talk some of this stuff out, to sit with my brothers. I mean, I skipped reunions, like unit reunions, because I couldn't go back. I have a lot of anger with the list, as I already alluded to, some of the leadership decisions and some of the leaders in the unit that I was, we were serving with. I probably would have inflicted physical violence on them if I was in the same room with them. I was mad. And so I avoided that conflict, whether that was an emotional conflict or potential physical conflict. I stayed away. I didn't talk to my brothers 20 years after I bled in the streets. We bled and fought together in the streets of Fallujah. I turned my back on them because I couldn't deal with the anger and the pain and after time, the guilt of not being able to do more, not being able to be a better Marine, not being able to save Marines. I'm just glad that I'm here now. I'm glad that we're at this point where y'all are here. You can hear some of the stories. I'm here with Aubrey, and we can talk some of this out, and we can share some of our own experiences that we went through the same thing, but with different perspectives. It's been a long 20 years dealing with some of that.
There really is no dealing with it. To be honest, there's no dealing with it. You get to a point where this medicine can get you to the point where I'm not going to slap you in the face in front of everybody. But it doesn't get me to a point to where I can be happy because my kids are doing well, or I can be happy because my wife is successful in something. I'm just kind of in a somber to where I'm not clicking off safe on people, but I'm not living a good life, and if you don't want to hear about God, you can leave real fast because I'm about to get on where I'm on, right? But so my life, I didn't have that, in the drug houses and stuff. I don't know if I can say that, but they had the Bibles in there. So I was like, well, that's what they're doing. I'm not going to do that. And then my grandparents, when I met them, they already late 80s, early 90s. So I felt like that was something they did to get right with the Lord. So me, I'm just looking for good people. And then when I find the Marine Corps, I find a lot of good people, a lot of angry people that's put in this environment that where we can be angry and be happy about it. Right? And I was loving life. And I still wasn't honoring God through that whole thing. And I found myself about to hurt myself, having the hardest time ever because I'm doing what we all do, thinking about the lack and thinking about what I don't have. I couldn't save Anderson, but it took me 12 years to thank God for protecting me from 10,000 bullets.
Yeah.
A 50 caliber machine gun shoots 1,829 bullets, and I was getting shot at by 2 of them. And y'all see them handsome darkness? It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, so they seen the boy, right? So they was on me. They was ready to get me, and God bless me and Russell and staff's on at the time to be able to come home from 10,000 bullets. Now, as of late, I'm able to reflect on, man, we can't do this without God. I mean, life was hard without him. Now I got him. It's like, it is what it is. Ain't no going back. So I'm going to tell anybody who's dealing with PTSD, I'm telling you, it's because you got pride. It's a choice. And I was choosing to be mad because of the bad calls that our leadership made. I was upset behind non-places. I'm talking about, I still want to fight about it. But we had that reunion. I had, my core values of life: love, invest, forgive, and example. I'm a life changer. I know that about myself. We all are. So when you embrace that, you just got to find yourself being thankful. And I couldn't believe that until I read it. So once I read it, it's like, man, be thankful at all things. Well, you're right. I can't be pissed off and be thankful at the same time. So let me just choose being thankful. I'm going to roll with that one.
Well, even with a little bit of a delay, we are running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to try to combine the final question here, and we'll wrap this up and land this. But we talked about yesterday at our opening session, our national adjutant got on stage and talked about hope. There's a lot that you're all still possibly processing. There's a lot of things that happen. Scary things happened. A lot of bad things happened. You touched on this, though. There's some good that came out of this. I know your stories. I've talked with each of you. I think I want to leave people with a message of hope. How have the experiences in Fallujah helped in a positive way in your life now? How are you using that for good? And how do you think this experience can help others, perhaps in our audience, other veterans, process a difficult time?
I mean, I guess I have a couple of small answers in my life. I mean, one, Fallujah and really all of my time with the Marines in my life now, for a lot of people, as you go older, your kind of social circle gets smaller and your close friends, sort of fewer of them, and people move and have life, go places and do whatever. In the last few years, I have reconnected reunions and other things with the guys that I was with over there. And it has been incredibly valuable for me and kind of relieving for me at times to reconnect with those people, right? Because it's one of those experiences where you meet up with somebody again and you haven't seen them in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. And it's like, you're right back, right? Like the connections that I have with them are still fresh and still present. And it's been very valuable for that to come back into my life. I guess the other thing I would say is, as I kind of referenced earlier, I have been doing a lot of, after 10 years of not engaging with this part of my life, and actually there are people who have known me a long time who will find out that I was in a place like Fallujah or doing something like that. And they're like, like people whose kids play baseball with my kid, right? And somehow they'll stumble across something and they'll be like, you did that? Like, you're just the guy who's, yelling at the ump like the rest of us, So it's surprising to a lot of people that even happened to me. And sometimes it's surprising to me.
For me, the question was what I got from the experience, what I leave people with. You're defined by your choice. You're not defined by your conditions. I would say that it's an acronym I got from it in my life. I done had to go through a whole bunch of what I call real shit. Y'all ready? It's relentless effort aligning life. You have to, most of us are jacked up because we're aligning to the wrong thing. It depends on what you're aligning to. I was aligning to, I couldn't save Anderson, so I was sick for a while. I was aligning to, I didn't do enough to stop Nosman from getting his face blown off, so I was holding on to that. I was aligning myself to where I didn't do enough to stop Demetrius from getting hit in that house. Like I had control of something when God was in control the whole time. So what am I aligning myself with? What is the truth, right? There's only one truth. You have to align yourself with that one. And shit is strength and hope in your transformation. The only reason you're going through something hard is because you're transforming for a bigger purpose. We always have a mission. And when you go through something hard, that doesn't mean because you made it through it that your service is over with. Like he was talking about, what I got from him is what I wanted, is you still have to continue to serve. You have to use what he just said. I'm using my experiences to help other people serve. So we have to understand that we're always in a form of service, because not only we're men and women of God, but when you raise your hand, you take an oath, it doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't matter what the black and white says, because it changes the contents of your character, and that's who you become. So if you're going through something, just choose to serve and help somebody else, and whatever you got going on, God gonna work that out for you.
My takeaway from all of this is we're given one moment. We're not promised the next breath. We're given this moment right now. And that's how we need to look at every single moment in life. To look in the past, it's okay to reflect, but we can't live there. That's allowing ourselves to become the bigger picture. And we can't necessarily put ourselves in the future because we're not guaranteed a future, but to put ourselves right here in the present. And then this experience has also helped me as a nurse. I'm a nurse now. When I take care of patients who are veterans, I have been given the gift of being able to relate with them. And I want to hear their story. And I think that's a big thing. If the world would just stop and ask, tell me your story. Tell me your story. And however little the veteran wants to open up and share that story, whether it's verbal diarrhea or just giving you a small glimpse of what they went through, it's allowing them a chance to heal. Our war wounds, whether they're physical or emotional, it is still scar tissue. And we will carry that with us always. But there is healing to be done through that. And I think my takeaway is asking people about their story and remembering that we have this moment now.
I'll start by saying I don't think I've found the same level of enlightenment that Aubrey has. I'm not at that point yet in my life. The things that I take away from there, number one, is God is real, and he has a plan. We don't understand that plan, and we have choices in life, but the choices are the choice of the path that he's already set for us, whether we know it or not. By all rights, I should not be on this stage with you all tonight based on the things I went through and the sheer circumstance or chance that took place, but God had a plan for me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my wife, my 3 beautiful daughters. Maybe it's being here talking and sharing with you, but there's a plan for all of us. There's a plan. And we just need to walk that path and believe in the good Lord above that he has a plan and he has something for us, and look to our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ and find that strength. As a Marine coming out of that battle, what I took away was, especially later on in my career as I became an officer of Marines, was train your Marines the right way. Train your service members to survive. Train them, because if you don't train them, you're setting them up for failure. There's only one thing this military is for, is to go out and win wars, is to kill people and to win the nation's battles. And if you're not training your service members to do that, you're failing them, because they're going to hit a point when they go to combat where it is life and death. It's them against the enemy, and they need to be mentally, physically, and technically prepared for that challenge. And as leaders, whether that's enlisted or officer side, you've got to train your service members for that fight. And we owe it to them, and we owe it to their families, so that they're as best prepared as they can for what they're going to face. They're still not all going to come home, but we have to set them up for success.
Thank you for sharing your stories. I know how personal they are. Thank you for opening up for us. Thank you.
Cars for DAV, Cars for DAV. Donate that car to DAV. Help a disabled veteran live proud and free. When you donate that car to DAV.
Donate a car to help disabled American veterans by calling 1-833-CAR-4DAV.
Cars for DAV. Help them live proud and free. Donate that car to DAV.
Visit carsfordav.org today.